very warmly welcome to the session on tackling rare diseases. It's a very important scientific area for the European Commission, for DG Santé and for DG Research and Innovation. It's been the case since many years, and you will hear more about it. We'll also want to listen to you here today, how you see the future, where we should go. But before we start with anything else, perhaps I should introduce myself. My name is Anna Lönnroth, and I'm heading the unit Healthy Lives in DG Research and Innovation. If you don't want to be web streamed or recorded on film, there are some black chairs right at the end of the room. Would you please move to those if this is the case? I don't see much from here. Otherwise, you're very welcome to also come forward here because there are free seats here in the front. I should also say that we have activated the Slido. I think you're aware of that. The code is R900 if you want to contribute to that. And you should also, I say, because you're many in the room, and we will try to give as many of you as possible the opportunity to really say something and contribute. But if you don't get a chance, because the session is very short, don't hesitate to come and see us in the village, the Health Cluster Village afterwards. You'll meet the staff, or, of course, or you can contribute to the open consultation that we'll also talk to you more about later on. The open consultation continues to run until the 4th of October, and we're really looking very carefully at all the advice that comes in there. So I have the pleasure now to introduce the rest of the panel here. First, we have Daria Jurkowska. She's from the Thematic Institute of Genetics, Genomics and Informatics at INSERM, and she's going to give the presentation, really take you up to speed of where we stand in this field of rare diseases, which is a lot, I would say. Then we have two moderators who is going to lead the session where you are providing your input. First, we have André Rus, who is a director in our sister DG, if you like, Santé, DG Health and Food Safety of the European Commission, and we work very closely together on these issues, as I already mentioned. And then we have Anne Paoletti, who is a scientific director for biology and health from the French Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation. As I said, it's all about providing input to the future Horizon Europe program. And we're talking about the first 4 years. We call it the strategic planning. And the way we do the strategic planning is we've always listened to the audience, and we'll always listen to other stakeholders in the past, but never to this extent as we do it now. And this is why it's so important for us to have your active participation and your contribution to this. And we really look forward to that. So again, we are listening mode. It's a little bit difficult for us as staff because we're used to speak in front of audiences that ask questions to us. So what is the Commission doing on this? And why is the Commission doing more on that and so on? This session is the other way around. We are listening to you. So, but without further talk about that, I'd like just to state the scope. Here we are to discuss the impacts that Horizon Europe should focus on in order to provide better lives for people with rare diseases. So before I hand over to André, he's going to take you through the result of the first, let's say, harvest, if you like, of the public consultations that already come in. I'd just like to say that rare diseases is not just like any other research area. It's very special. People suffering from rare diseases who are patients are very often actually part of the research. This is not something you can say for every area. It creates a unique opportunity, of course, for Europe, because you can't say for rare diseases, oh, fund at that national level. You could equally fund at the national level. It's not possible. This is so unique. It's different from everything else. And I think this is a reason why we have so fantastic representation here in the room. I see a lot of people coming in, and I see a lot of exciting faces. So I don't want to talk anymore, but I'll hand over to André, please.
Thank you very much, Anna. Good afternoon, everybody. You know, you have seen that we are united now, research team and kind of health policy and health system team, regulators as well. You know, the DG is also regulatory in the field of pharmaceuticals. Orphan, of course, is our important part of our regulation. Pediatrics, by the way, going to the quite important evaluation now. But at the same time, you know, we are now jumping to the medical devices world, so in digitalization. So we also are interested to hear all about the practicalities of those things. And as a DG Sante, we are also managing the European Reference Network system, which together, of course, with member states and coordinators. So what we learned from the, oops, I'm going right direction, I think.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So as Anna said, we have really to stick to our plan to have as much input from you. So we leave major time, you know, for you, and we together with Anne will try to help with discussion. So please make sure you speak shortly and give your input. We can not that everything is now also kind of put in the notes of this panel, so we'll be sharing with others. Don't forget that we are still on the hearing mode as a commission. The formal consultation was prolonged because we really, due to the holidays period, we felt that we need to give time, you know, for academia be back on duty and give us input before the hot season starts. You know, there are some challenges when you try to put this in this tool. You know how people feel. We also before this panel we spoke with Anne shortly, and we understood that since 30 years, in 1999, formally, European Union is putting the rare diseases as one of the priority area in many programs, and it would be also interesting to say, okay, we are there. How we can go to the next step. So what we learned from the first input from the consultation, you know, it is not yet everything. Those people, they send us their remarks, their ideas to the current, during the current period. In one hand, of course, you know, there is view that rare diseases, they are connected to other disease areas, so you cannot completely extract them from the whole disease system or health systems. So issue like personalized medicine approach, it's here and there. You know, it'll be interesting to hear you also, because some people will tell me it's not exactly, but maybe we'll learn more from Daria. Transdisciplinary strategies is an important one. Integrated understanding of disease mechanism for prediction, prevention, detection. Drug processing is a very interesting area. But at Sante, we are really interested to push this agenda. And then we are in the world of data, digital, and artificial intelligence. This is booming field, and with also a lot of questions, you know, how we can better use this new development. Then we go specifically to the comments on the rare diseases. So the comments about the only transitional approach could lead us to get results in the field. Good question. It's true, Daria, but let's tell us. Understanding the basic mechanism of diseases, this of course is something we really are looking for, and can we get more information? Can we really see that there is something behind the beginning? And then, you know, of course the all issues around the unmet needs. You know, we by the way, in the orphan regulations, you will see hopefully soon the publications when we finish evaluation. This was one of the important questions, why we can do research or get results in some areas, in others this is less possible. Finally, the forms of and of course the big questions about the clinical trials. This one, I think it's maybe I will leave now to you. This is I was told this is the slide to tell you, light is on you, but it's on Daria.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to stand because I'm of Polish origin. I work in France, but I gesticulate like an Italian person, so I need some space. So I have a big challenge to present you, a kind of more than 15 or 20 years of work on rare disease in 10 minutes. And I'm going to start with actually the global vision, because you cannot speak about rare diseases today without thinking globally. And so that's why I wanted to start with the International Rare Disease Research Consortium, which actually was founded in 2011 and brings together, it's a collaborative network that brings together different types of stakeholders, funders, industry, patient organizations that work together on, I would say, a specific strategic agenda for rare diseases research that provide the solutions, the recommendations, and that subsequently implement them. So this consortium established in 2017. Actually, it established its new vision, a new goal for 2027, and this is something that is driving, I would say, the driving force also at the European level. So this vision is to enable all people living with rare diseases to receive an accurate diagnosis, care and available therapy within 1 year of coming to medical attention. You would say it's a very ambitious goal, but the idea is really that those stakeholders that are part of ERDERC are really there not only to talk and provide their recommendations, but also to make things happen at the national and international level. So this consortium brings stakeholders from all over the world, and actually is organized in several committees, the committees which are called constituents, so bringing together funders, industry, and patient organizations, and also, on the other hand, the scientific committees on therapies, diagnosis, and interdisciplinary. And those committees are really working together to identify the bottlenecks, to form what we call the task forces, to provide the recommendations, and then to really work on them. So I'm giving here only one example of a task force, for example, on the small population clinical trials, of which the goal was to advance discussions, to optimize and improve commonly adopted approaches, and to reach agreement between different stakeholders on appropriate small population studies. The output was a paper, and now we are actually implementing or preparing the implementation of research projects that are going to validate the specific methodologies that were proposed for the small populations clinical trials, and that are going to serve us also as the arguments, for example, for the regulatory bodies to implement some specific actions. So this is the role of ERDERC. It's not only about talking, it's not just being there and producing some papers, but the members of ERDERC really engage and then implement the actions at the national level and at the international level. And actually, the European Commission is also part of the members of ERDERC. So you can see that actually it really has an impact of what's going on in different countries and at the European level. So now, if I look a little bit at what is actually the rare disease landscape in Europe, and this is, as I mentioned, actually a result of many, many years of working together. So you have different types of stakeholders. If we think about research, you have, of course, the ones that are dedicated to the strategy, as I mentioned, the ERDERC, but also the European Commission. You have the funders. Until now, we have the ERANET era that was bringing together different national funders, coming together and created a common program, funding program for rare disease research. You have, of course, the European Commission that invested more than 1.4 billion euros in research on rare diseases. You have also, and very importantly, patients that are represented by EuroOrdis and more than 800 patient organizations. And since 2016, we also have the European reference networks that for us are the connector between the healthcare and research. And on the top of that, you have all those rare disease infrastructure, or the infrastructures dedicated to research, part of which are specifically dedicated to rare diseases, like the Orphanet, like the RD Connect, like the ERDRI platform of the European Commission for the registries, and some others which are more dedicated to the medical, let's say, or healthcare research, and that are also relevant for rare diseases. So this is all those actors at the European level were involved in different types of projects, working together, and the idea was really to create, how we can move together, how we can create a common let's say, platform for all those stakeholders to work together and to accelerate the research on rare disease for the benefit of patients. And so for that reason, we created, so together with the European Commission, the European Joint Programme on Rare Diseases. So this program actually started only in January of this year, but its main objective is really to create the rare diseases research ecosystem, bringing all those types of stakeholders together to facilitate the work, to bring some new schemes, to bring some new tools for rare disease research, and of course, the translation of the research results into the benefits of patients and therapies development. So this program brings together all those different types of stakeholders that I already mentioned. It is co-financed by the European Commission and the member states, and brings together 35 countries and more than 130 institutions from those countries. So brings together the funders, the hospitals, the research institutes, patients, and foundations, of course. Very briefly, I'm not going to give you a lot of details about that. I strongly encourage you to also to go to our website, but just to show you how we are bringing, this ecosystem together. So the idea is that we have an overarching coordination and transversal activities with a strategy that is also very strongly driven by the ERDOC recommendations. Of course, with the sustainability, everything which is related to the ethical and regulatory aspects and communication. And then all the other activities are divided into the 4 pillars. And so here, of course, you're not going to read everything which is on the slide. They will be shared. But the idea is really to show you that we really think globally, and all the pillars are really working together. So we have the pillar 1 that focuses on funding, where we implement different types of funding schemes. So we have multinational fundings or funding of the multinational research projects. We have new funding schemes like the funding for the networking, that is a cost-type action. We also are fostering the private-public partnerships there. So different types of funding implemented in this program for the benefit of all the countries participating in the EJPRD. We also creating there or fostering the creation of the virtual platform that is going to bring together all different types of data and resources that should be interoperable, accessible, and reusable, of course. This is also where the innovation takes place in terms of the seeing the undiagnosed diseases, for example, from a different perspective, or trying to diagnose the diseases and going beyond, let's say, the genomics. We have a pillar 3 that brings together different types of training programs. So trainings for patients, trainings for researchers, trainings focusing on research, trainings focusing on the leaderships, trainings focusing also on the specific needs of the stakeholders from the EU 13 countries, because we want to involve them more. And then the pillar 4, where you have the translation, the innovation, the acceleration of the development or the translation of research results, and of the implementation of the clinical trials with the methodologies that I just mentioned also before. So one important aspect of funding, and I think it's important because this is also something that led us, and actually we have this kind of a discussion, always discussion or complementarity, because between what's going on at the national, multinational and EU level in terms of the funding is the differences that we have for rare disease research funding. So what you need to know that, of course, the national funding is obviously mostly focused on national projects. There are quite few countries that allow funding, for example, of the international consortia, so the money doesn't go from one country to the other. Of course, it is very much dependent on the national strategy, and unfortunately, I must say that even though we have the national plans for rare disease in the majority of the European countries, having a specific national rare diseases funding is not the case in the majority of them. And that's why actually we have those kind of multinational funding schemes. So this is what is happening, what was happening before in ERA. This is what is happening now in the EJPRD, which means that we are bringing the funders from different countries that are working together on a common program that finances multinational research projects, but funding is still national. But that means that we already have a common strategy, we have a common rules. But it's true that the funders commit on a yearly basis, so it means that one year a country may participate, the other one not. And there are, of course, some specific obstacles because of the fact that since the funding is national, it not necessarily allows, for example, financing of some specific infrastructures, like, for example, the European research infrastructure that are centralized bodies and that are quite difficult to finance at the multinational level. And so this is where I would say the European funding is very important, because what we can do through the funding of the European Commission obviously must have an added European value. And I think that obviously in rare diseases, this is not a problem to identify this. But it's true that the European funding allows, for example, funding of clinical trials that may be very difficult at the national or even the multinational level, and also funding of other types of schemes that are not possible through those complementary national and multinational schemes. So I'm going to finish with this one slide where obviously it's not exhaustive, and actually this is why we are going to discuss with you today. But what would be the rare disease challenges? Where do we stand? So which are the ones that we are kind of fostering, although not exhaustively? So please don't take it, as something that is, boxed and we can't move, and the ones that are still remaining. So through the creation, for example, of the European Joint Programme and the complementarity of the actions that are being implemented by the European Commission, but different DGs, research, santé, of course, and connect, we can say that today we are trying to foster really the interoperable organization, let's say, of the accepted standards, the governance, the collection and organization and sharing of data. However, the sharing and the reuse of data, especially for research, is still a major, I would say, bottleneck, and that on which we definitely need to advance. We also have a more structured connection of research effort also with the European reference networks, because they are also fully implicated in the European Joint Programme. We have, through the schemes that we are now implementing, we hope, and we are enhancing the uptake of the research results and translation. We are systematically implicating patients in different, let's say, type of activities, although, as I said, it's not yet sufficient. So we hope that we are going to improve on this. And then, of course, we have the centralized planning and coordination that is today translated, at least partially, through the EGPRD. But there are many challenges that are still remaining. So, of course, better integration of rare disease patients in the research pipeline is a very big challenge. And this is something which is also one of the goals of ERDC. We need to enhance also the research capacity of the ERNs that were created, let's say, as initially for the healthcare, but have a huge research capacity, and it means that we need to help them to develop it or to maximize it. As I already mentioned, the sharing of data, and especially healthcare data for research, is crucial. We also need novel concepts for the therapies and for the underrepresented or undiagnosed rare diseases. And this is so we need more, I would say, innovation in that specific themes. And of course, we cannot forget about the, let's say, all the aspects which are related to the socio-economical aspects and the fair medicines, the repurposing, the cost effectiveness of the development of the drugs. And I'm going to stop here.
Thank you, Daria. It was Italian. Speed as well. We prepare some kind of colleagues. Here we still have empty chairs. So if you like white chairs that are here, the black are already occupied. I should inform the white chair. So please, it's there are already 10 free chairs here. So we prepare some ideas for the questions, but I don't like you to just keep them in mind, because we can put them around the treatment, diagnosis, for example, and how our focus should be on diagnosis, but we can turn this upside down. What about the treatments and impacts, and how we should invest on treatment side, clinical trials, for example, which Daria refers as one of the areas Europe should go, or something which can address social challenges, the impact on health systems, the way we are working, how we should organize better the access to patients, and so on. So we start a discussion. So together with Anne, we'll try to share floor and make a notes and try to conclude. But the floor is yours, and so please, who like to make the comments, suggestion to the new program, what can be done better, how we should connect, different approaches, working together, getting better results. So please.
Maybe,
would like to make a comment.
If I may,
Yeah,
maybe I will say just a couple of sentences, because it's really your opinion that matters today and not ours. But I think it may be important to remind you what rare disease represents. I'm sure you're all aware, but it's 6,000 to 8,000 diseases. Just a few numbers, key numbers. 6 to 7% of the European population that may be affected during the course of their life. And in terms of diagnosis, half of them who might not be diagnosed. So that's the challenge. Try to get a diagnosis for all of these 50% of people who don't yet have a precise diagnosis. In terms of treatments, we are even in a more difficult situation with probably the very vast majority of diseases who don't have curing treatment, curing therapy. So that's what we have to think about, and that's for these challenges that we have to find out what should be the impact of the Horizon Europe in the coming years to help solve these issues and answer to the other goals, which are really challenging. So the stage is yours now, and we will take your questions.
We have mics somewhere.
Your remarks.
Yeah, so Mike goes first, the lady in the left.
My name is Maureen Rutten. I'm a professor in health economics from Erasmus University, Rotterdam. One of the challenges that we have to look into, I think, is on the feasibility of value-based pricing, because we're witnessing many new, potentially very valuable therapies which might lead to a cure, and essentially they are priceless. And the industry uses the value-based pricing argument to ask outrageously high prices, which is not sustainable in the long term. So we need to look into new pricing and financing models, I guess.
Okay, so the direction of travel on the better understanding how much you like to pay and why, and what are the also reimbursement mechanisms. Please, on the right.
Thank you. My name is Pamela Cairns. I'm the president of the European Society of Paediatric Oncology. And obviously our interest in rare diseases is that all childhood cancers are rare. And we have made our progress in childhood cancer through cross-border clinical research, doing clinical trials in multiple countries. And I very much welcome the comments about the importance of getting EU funding for a trial that can cover all the countries and the barriers of sharing data across borders. But I think the opportunity here is that even though we can develop the statistical modelling, the methodology to do rare diseases clinical trials, and we can get the funding, we've had the opportunity to have Horizon 2020 funding for international trials. Our barrier still is that for per patient that goes into a clinical trial in a rare disease, the individual cost of that patient in the trial is high, because the regulatory requirements to deliver a clinical trial is no less for a rare disease from a common disease. So I think an area of research that would be very important is regulatory science. How can we do robust, scientifically valid clinical research in rare diseases that is not almost impossible to do because of the regulatory burden that's associated with it? I'm not suggesting we should have less regulations in rare diseases clinical trials, but we need to understand how to facilitate clinical trials where we need to open hundreds of sites, many of which may not even recruit a patient because of the rarity of the disease, but we need to capture the patients by having lots of countries and sites open.
Okay, about the multi-center clinical trials, not just regulatory, but also the capture mechanism. And then there's also something when we discuss the role of ERNs, registries, there's something about data sharing. Maybe we can also discuss a little bit, because this data issue is I think it's coming, in many fields. So, but how to recruit, how to use, by the way, new clinical trials regulation hopefully will be in place in next year or two, to basically use this new regulatory framework for acceleration. accelerating our clinical trials.
I think this brings also a discussion about the methodology, specific methodology for small population in the field of rare diseases. And I think this is one of the areas that is tackled right now by the EGPRD. And maybe Daria can say a word about it.
So this is the case. And another thing I wanted to mention is that under the EGPRD, we are working with ECRIN, which is dedicated to the, let's say, facilitating the establishment of multinational clinical trials, and we opened the support office dedicated to specifically to rare diseases. So it's already open. You can come with the demands through the EGPRD. So, it's of course we need to advance more, but we already have this kind of support because we understand very well how challenging it is to have a multinational clinical trials in rare diseases.
Please wait, the mic is coming.
You need it.
Chemist from the University of Bari, Italy. Sorry, I arrived just a bit late because I was in another meeting. A general question. Rare cancers can be considered in this context?
I think we treat them as a rare disease part. We have, by the way, in the ERN structure, we have 2 dedicated ERNs to the cancers, children and adults, and also 2-3 others networks that are dealing with cancers. So I think rare cancers, I think it's also a nice capacity to.
I was thinking about ovarian cancer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to say one.
Do we have other suggestions, and especially about diagnosis, which was one of the first items? Yes.
Yes, hi, Virginie Brosface, Eurordis, Rare Disease Europe. I think regarding diagnosis, but that goes maybe a bit also within prevention, it's an area we haven't really talked about or heard much about, and I think it's a missed opportunity, especially for rare disease patients, is that of newborn screening programs. I think today there's a huge inequality across the different member states. And for, I think, various reasons, whether they're health economic or based on really dated criteria that I think were developed in the 50s and the 60s. But now, with the technology that we have today, and also the potential to improve the quality of life of those children, potentially, there is really a need to try and do a bit more research in terms of updating those criteria, both on the socio-economic aspects, but also in view of the new technology that we have today, and maybe do also some health economic analysis on that, because I do believe that it's a missed opportunity, and really the society as well, the impact on society could be huge if we were to review those a bit more closely now.
Yeah, and we add ethical concerns as well, so we'll be in the full picture. So please pass mic there and then to the first row.
So Lucia Monaco, Fondazione Teleton from...
Can you speak louder, please?
Yes, Lucia
please.
Monaco, Fondazione Teleton IRDIRC, and IRDIRC Consortium Assembly Chair. So I think that Daria gave a very wide and let's say, very optimistic view of the fact that in Europe we are already doing a lot of work. There is a very strong network of interactions across different programs. The EJP, the European Joint Programme on Rare Diseases, already addresses the issue of rare diseases in an all-around approach, as Daria has illustrated. And I think optimally, the Commission should widen this view and this approach also to other funding instruments, meaning that the amount of funds that is dedicated to basic research for rare diseases within the EJP will never be enough to cover the great capacity of the excellent science that is taking place in Europe. Dedicated calls on rare diseases, on specific topics, are needed and well-funded, and also go beyond the mechanisms that are associated to the co-funding that, as Daria mentioned, are excluding some subsets of investigators due to the particular setup of these instruments. And I'm thinking in particular of the ERC program, that is a bottom-up program that is promoting excellent science. And we are all aware that among the ERC projects, there are very good projects on rare diseases. These should be put into the ecosystem of rare diseases and not left in isolation, but put in the network so that whatever result they will produce at any step in the pipeline from discovery up to application and therapies is connected to this network that is already very powerful and I think is leading globally as an example of success.
So thank you very much for this contribution. I think it can be also connected to the previous contributions saying how important it is that there is some funding at the European level to fund clinical trials, but as well other types of research. And that all these efforts should be combined with the effort of structuration that was well described by Daria. So thank you for
since I am fan of this approach, with my whole, as you know, with full commitment. But of course, there's also the warning, and I hear sometimes, from those that are putting money to the infrastructure, for example. And the result is that just pick up the genetic testing is not high quality because it's not investment in the human resources, it's not investment in the service to buy. So basically, researchers or laboratories are left without next stage support. So I think we need to make sure that the investment made is also used, because I think this is a kind of corruptive thinking. Why I should invest, put money, if in instruments or investment, it doesn't pay back to the patients, to the organization. So I really would like to make sure that when we speak ecosystem, we also should make sure this is efficient and kind of producing result. I know, sorry, because it was the comment to the,
Yeah, thank you. You're absolutely right. One important element in this discussion is the sustainability of infrastructures after the funding phase that is allowed to set them up. Because for many infrastructures, it takes some time, a few years, to set them up, to get the system up and running. And when they're up and running, the funding is finished. The issue of sustainability, of course, is more and more discussed. But we need to have a system in place for maintenance and evolution of these infrastructures, or any kind of support and service that is set up. Otherwise, as you say, when it is ready, nobody will use it because nobody is taking care of having it running.
So please, sorry for this disruptive co-creation.
My name is Anna Kristín Danielsdóttir, and I have a son with a rare disease, and it's called CFC syndrome. You probably have never heard it. It's like 1 in a million thing. And but I was I am a geneticist also, so that I'm both sides. I was at a family conference in the States in the summer, and there had been an increase in patients diagnosed, and the patients were few months old, and I was like, oh, what's happening? And so they said that in the States they have whole genome sequencing and exon sequencing, and like they all had it somehow, and like it seems like they are a step ahead of us in Europe, because my son was diagnosed 6 years of age, and then they are now diagnosing in a few weeks. So it's an interesting point in relation to the diagnostic, because it is all like interlinked. Because if you don't have patients in the registry, you are less likely to get into clinical trials, and so it's highly important to think of all aspects of this, ecosystem, like you call it. So, and I think I had one more point, and no, this is all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very, very, very interesting point. As access to diagnostic, the quality of diagnostic sharing. But Daria, can you comment on this? Because we often see here, as it was rightly said, we are ahead of the wave, but US is in some areas,
Well, I think
better.
it's very much, I would say, the nature of bioethical also, and Europe is great. And we could say that yes, we should be the one competing. Let's say we're at least at the same level of the United States. But the fact that we have those different legislations and regulations in different countries are indeed kind of slowing us down in terms of the of the diagnosis and more harmonized approaches. I think that what is great and what we have, and which is not the case for the US, are the European reference networks, and the fact that we have now those networks that cover different diseases, and it means that they will facilitate first of all the identification of patients, the diagnosis, the expertise that is coming, that the patient doesn't have to travel to the experts, but experts are traveling to patients. So I think we have a lot of hope also with it.
By the way, I think this is one area we most probably have to think in the next funding and also supporting instrument. How, because patients, they not need trial, but also sample is easier to travel than patients. So we discuss in the areas, okay, why I should develop infrastructure in hospital A or B or country A or Y, if this sample can be sent to get the good quality quick diagnosis in country in Europe, but maybe even in the US. So I think we should be open also for different way of thinking about the cooperation.
It may be one point there to answer.
Yes, you're on.
No.
Yeah. Speak loud.
Hello.
In Iceland, we have, where I come from, we have a huge company called Decode. And they are sequencing the whole genome sequencing in, I think, something like 5 days now. And all of you know that it took 30 years to sequence the first one, 30 years ago. But then we don't need to have so many labs doing it, because we can always send the sample. The DNA sample is very small, and it's easily transferable between countries. So the infrastructure need to be just built in few places, but they need to be there. And I'm sure we can do better than USA if we put our heads together.
Thank you. It's very crush, from Vikings. Okay, go. Mike goes there.
There's somebody else on the black chair.
I'm Raúl Malaina from the Madrid Health Service. We coordinate one of the European reference networks, and I think that these networks are not founded enough, because even there are some exchanges of ideas or knowledge between professionals, still there is big barriers for the exchange of electronic health records of the patients. And this is happening because, we don't have money enough, while some other fields are good finance. So I think this will help a lot to exchange the electronic health records, even when we have already the consent of the patient, which is not the barrier now. So I think this is crucial for their easy and quick diagnosis.
Yes, thank you very much for this comment. I think this was pointed out already by Daria during her talk, but I think the exchange of data is absolutely crucial to promote better diagnosis in particular, but also treatment afterwards. It's important at all levels. And definitely that's a point on which Europe has a key role to play, and there are several issues to solve. It's about various legislations. It's about technical points. It's about standardization of data. So there are lots of issues to be working on. I think this is tackled for rare diseases first, because this community, these diseases and this community has much has realized earlier than any other the need for this exchange. So I think there is a big role for the community to play. Maybe there are other interventions on data to complement.
Yeah, it was, I think, speak louder.
Sandra Almeida from Takeda. I would like to go on this topic of diagnosis because we continue relying on the physician diagnosis that we know that it's not enough nowadays. We still have 80% of patients undiagnosed and many patients misdiagnosed. Also, and on the other hand, the patients take 5 to 8 years to achieve a proper diagnosis. They go through several experiments for several therapies. So in what regards to the data, there are many efforts that are being done, and we need maybe to think just a challenge for us, maybe beyond Europe. For rare disease patients especially, if we want to use new technologies, we need to have the data connected. And it's not about moving data. We can learn from other experiences, from oncology, from hematology, and from European Commission projects that are actually happening, that we can have the data connected, anonymized, and reusable. And I think this fits the goals of the European Commission and fits the goals of everybody in this room. So if we start anonymizing this data, creating, maybe not going in the infrastructure, moving data because this will not be compliant, the GDPR will not allow, but there are many registries, national registries, European registries, there are Eurordis, Global Genes is making this kind of effort. Why don't we try to connect this data that can be, for example, used to build digital algorithms that we can provide to the physicians in the hospitals that can actually flag a patient of having a risk of rare disease. So this is maybe the kind of approach that we can have by using new technology, but for this we need a global effort and we need to have the data connected. And on the other hand, if we want to better understand disease, because we don't have proper disease models at the moment, if we want to better understand the disease, we can also use AI, we can also use deep learning to do this. And we can identify maybe new biomarkers. We can run these algorithms in other sets of data, pediatric data, oncology, cardiology. And I mean, European Union has been making a big effort to have these repositories. They are there. Maybe we just need to have a more integrated and coordinated approach and maybe a global one.
Thank you very much. There is a voices on the left. Sorry, because we have lights on us, so I should be on you.
I understand. I'll try to be as loud as I can. Francesco Florindi. I work for BBMRI ERIC, which is the research infrastructure that connects more than 500 biobanks and provides access to over 100 million samples throughout Europe. I have maybe a positive message and a question to the panel. Positive message is that I'm very happy what the lady in the front said. We have enough bright people. The lady in the front, I can't see her. We have enough bright minds. We just have to smash their heads together. BBMRI, EATRIS, the transnational translational research infrastructure, and ECRAN, the clinical trials research infrastructures. We're building an alliance. We wrote a memorandum of understanding to actually do what the lady from Takeda just mentioned, to try to streamline a little bit the work that we three infrastructures do, because we end up working in all the projects together, including Daria's wonderful EGPRD, but we can have a better understanding. So my question to you is, would this approach of consolidating the research infrastructure be ultimately useful to the not only to rare disease but also to other disease areas? And if so, can the funders, the European Commission, provide guidance to the research infrastructures? Because we know what we can do, but maybe a little bit more political support is necessary to actually push other research infrastructures other than BBMRI, EATRIS, and ECRAN in this way.
Yeah,
let us help you. Let us help us help you, if I can say that.
Francesca, I like this point, because of now I'm turning to my partner from research ministry, because I used to be vice minister for health, and I remember often the problem between, as I said, two of us, two sectors, is that you are financing research money or the RTD with put money there, and the Ministry of Health is surprised that something is there, and how to use this, And I think that what we did, by the way, preparing the program, I think we spent hundreds of hours together between, Ministry of Education and Health and us, RTD, GRC, and we came out with this idea. But it's a unique, or can we do better?
We can certainly do better. There is always a way to do better with what we are undertaking together, because lots of matters are complicated anyway, so it takes a lot of thinking. But in terms of collaborations between countries and also collaboration between Europe and countries, I think it's very important that things are done in a coordinated way. And I think the research infrastructure is one case where there is a very big involvement of countries, actually. The countries participate in this S3 roadmap in order to create this infrastructure, and they should be used at best to foster the rest of research programming in Europe. I think that's definitely very necessary, because it's a very big investment on the countrysides. So I think, definitely let's use the infrastructure at their as best as possible.
Can I ask, because we have a few minutes more left, the question, about the Europe East, West, South, North, how we are doing, because you told me that you just came back from Poland as a kind of envoy to get Poles, more involved. It's how we looks like as Europe in this.
So, well, obviously we can always do better, but it's true that this is something that, let's say this EU 15 versus EU 13, this is definitely not the way we should go. So, and we receive a lot of, let's say, input and voices from the EU 13 countries to make them involve more. So, at least in the JPRD, we are, advancing progressively, but started from funding, where we put in place, some specific widening concept to get better engage the community from EU 13 countries into the rare disease research projects. And now in the JPRD, it's expanded to the training, of course, to the innovation and so on. So, the example of the meeting that, and also very importantly, and something that I have not mentioned is the creation of the national mirror groups, which actually brings together all different aspects, meaning that we are really doing our best to align, let's say, the national strategies with this European and international strategy through the dialogue with the national mirror groups that are being created in different countries, and where they bring different stakeholders in the rare disease field to dialogue better and to get a better input also from the national point of view.
So maybe I will just add one sentence about this. I think this is extremely important, that what is developed at the European level is then amplified inside each of the countries. And a number of countries in Europe have national plans to do that. It's the case of France. So we are trying to take use of what is developed in the EJP right now to foster some actions in France to amplify the movement. And this is true of course, for the data, but it's true also for innovation, for example. So that's a very important message, even though I was supposed to listen to you and not to send message. I think that's a very important message.
So before I ask Anne to give us a few observations, sorry, is this still last maybe intervention from you, Anne?
Thank you. Alistair Leyland, representing the European Public Health Association. I think about 20% of the rare diseases are non-genetic, and it's important that funding is given to these as well. In particular, I'd like to think about infectious diseases and how two more global problems are going to impact more widely on public health, including in Europe. And these are climate change. As the climate changes across the world, the hosts for neglected diseases will move and may be entering Europe, or at least countries nearer Europe. and the other is austerity programs throughout the world and the impact those are having. For example, in Brazil, where we see reduction in health services combined with the eradication of welfare programs which are harming individuals' resistance to disease, this is likely to lead to spread of infectious diseases. So this is something that could potentially become more important in Europe.
Thank you very much. Before I give you floor, because I cannot resist, say that we try, to generate interest or year ends on the rare infection disease, tropical disease one. Somehow didn't work out, but I think we are still open at least to generate interest around Europe to link the centers and start to be prepared for the future network year end. And the last point on the data, as you maybe some of you read the letter of my commissioner, she was mandated by our president-elect to develop the European health data space. And this is something really we hope to work with you and of course build up together and find, as Anne said, number of interlink between existing resources, data, and how to make them use in the research, but also in the clinical development. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Andre. This is going to be a very big challenge. I've been asked to summarize my impressions of the session. I think it's, first of all, it's been an amazing dialogue, I would say, between the panel here and you out there. Many lessons learned for us and food for thought. So perhaps I start with just stating what many people don't understand. I'm sure you all understand that in the room here. It needs to be said that rare diseases, yes, they are rare, each one of them, but altogether, as a group, it's not a rare phenomenon, and I think that's very important to state that. If I compare, or maybe you also have been around to other sessions here up to now, you will continue, and you compare where we stand in Europe on rare diseases in terms of collaboration, in terms of structures that we set up and where we are. We are so advanced in this field, but we have challenges, and some of them have been mentioned here. For instance, the huge challenge of running clinical trials, the huge challenge of the costs of the final product once you manage to produce a therapy, for example, the missed opportunity of not developing and implementing fully the newborn screening programs, because here you have a fantastic opportunity to really improve the quality of life for those individuals affected. We also have, I like very much what we already seems to be a very well-established term of the rare disease ecosystem, because all these supporting activities, the research, the clinical activities going on, it is really truly an ecosystem that continuously needs to be nurtured. We talked about also the important role of having sustainability in infrastructures in this field, because you can't invest a lot of money and then just see it fading away or hoping for some miracle to happen in the future. Then we need to find ways to solve this problem in a more robust way. Then I thought it was great to state that all we need to do is really put our heads together more than we've done. Although, despite the many fantastic efforts that have been made and the coordination that is already there, we can do better. We put our heads together, and we'll be better than the US. I think I heard someone. That sounds good to me. The ERNs are essential. They need to be better funded. They're very much appreciated. The diagnosis, although we have produced a lot of diagnosis through these collaborations, through these activities, there are many diseases that will remain without a possibility to properly diagnose, or the diagnosis is very slow. We need, in order to solve this, we need to use the data that we have collected even better. and also address the risk of the rare diseases, not only those individuals who already show symptoms, but who actually run risks. We could better use the possibilities offered through artificial intelligence, and we need to also work on biomarkers for the future. Not to forget the widening. We need to have everybody involved, not only the west and north of Europe, but the south and the east as well. So the what we call the widening on the U13 or whatever you want to say, it's very important to get everybody involved, and particularly for an area like rare diseases where their cases are so few in every corner of Europe. And then lastly, of course, we shouldn't forget also what comes as the society and the climate and so on. We are in transition from what we knew as in the past to what's coming in the future, and with that might bring new challenges in terms of, for example, infectious diseases that we haven't seen here so far.
Thank you very much.
That was my summary. If something that comes to mind, please chip in. I may have missed something important.
Would you like to say a few words?
No, I think there is a lot to do, a lot of expectation from patients. Maybe we didn't speak a lot about the involvement of patients and patients' organization. It was mentioned by Daria, but then there was not many comments about it. Maybe because it's already well integrated.
It's natural.
And it becomes so natural that we don't need to speak about it. But I think, yeah, some efforts should be made to involve patients even more. That's an aspect maybe that is important to outline as well.
What did I miss, Randy?
No, patients, but also we should not forget about clinicians, about researchers. This is exactly what you said. This is somehow in our minds, but I think it's also good to spell out. We really need to be united, and also Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health. So I'm calling for this also, because we really sometimes we are forgetting about the kind of the opportunities, and we try to be united in the Commission more and more now on this front. So thank you very much, Daria. I didn't ask you for your last word. What we miss.
I would say maybe I would add also the, let's say, going beyond the schemes to which we are used to, especially in terms of the diagnosis and trying, and so the artificial intelligence and the integration of what we can get from the others to really accelerate the diagnosis of rare disease is also very important.
Yes, one thing I forgot to mention that was in my notes actually, that to better integrate the basic research with the more downstream research activities. So there's still some homework to do. We think we are well coordinated. We are well coordinated. We're fantastic if I compare to some of the other research areas that I visited this morning. But there's a long way to go to be even better. So I think I would like personally to thank you everyone for coming here. It's been really a great session, I think, and the panel as well. So we should perhaps...
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And don't forget to visit us in the village, the health cluster, and also to use the public consultation. As you see, we are really reading the input.
First, click this.